Welcome to the Noche UFC prop drop, where I briefly go over every single matchup on this card and give you guys my thoughts on my favorite props, whether it's for the winner or for the loser. In case you're looking for hedge opportunities, I got you guys covered there. So without further ado, let's get right into it. First matchup up is going to be the Ultimate Fighter finale, which goes down in the welterweight division between Donchenko and Rodrigo Sezinando. I feel this is a pretty binary fight with if Donchenko trying to keep this fight standing so he can utilize his Muay Thai background to bust up Sezinando. And I think if he can do that, he'll eventually come across a knockout, which you can get at plus 190. On the flip side for Sezinando, I think Donchenko's submission defense is good enough that if Sezinando does successfully get him to the ground and grind him out, I think his best path to victory would likely be to win this fight on the scorecards, which you can get by decision at plus 500. Next up, we got the UFC debut of Alice Pereira coming in against Montserrat Rendon. Now, a lot of people are mistaking Alice with Aline, who is actually Alex Pereira's sister, but that's not the case. Alice does not have any relation to Alex or Aline, so don't get that twisted. But if you want to draw any type of comparison, Alice definitely throws very hard and lands with a lot of impact, and I think that could actually lead to her finding that big shot to put Rendon away here, which would lead to Pereira winning this fight by knockout, which you can get at plus 420. On the flip side for Montserrat Rendon, she's a BJJ brown belt. She's very physical. She's very strong, and she might be able to put that woman's strength on the 19-year-old and maybe grind her out, and you can get Rendon to win by decision at plus 220. Next up, we got Alessandro Costa taking on short notice UFC newcomer Alden Coria. I believe the explosivity, strength, power, and BJJ black belt of Costa will likely help him dictate the pace of this matchup. And I think he ends up going out there, chipping away at Coria and winning this fight on the scorecards, which you can get at plus 170. Costa may also look to try to stay away from the striking of Coria and take this fight to the ground. And you can possibly get Costa to win by submission at plus 360, although I think this ends up hitting the scorecards. On the flip side, for Coria, if he can successfully keep this fight standing, if he can successfully shut down the calf-kicking game of Costa and utilize his technically superior striking, he might be able to chip away at Costa and win this fight on the scorecards, which you can get at plus 950. But there's also the possibility that he showcases his deceiving knockout power and he comes through via knockout, which you can get at plus 700. Our next up, we got Zachary Reese going up against Cedricus Dumas. I like me some Reese in this spot, and I think we'll see a classic Reese performance. I think he goes out there and gets the knockout, which you can get at plus 155. But specifically, I think he goes out there and gets that round one knockout, pretty much how the majority or pretty much all of his wins came before he joined the UFC roster. And you can get Reese to win by knockout in round one at plus 320. On the flip side for Dumas, I think he's going to have to get to his grappling or point fighting style, which will likely mean that he ends up winning this fight on the scorecards, which is plus 800. And if he is successful with getting this fight to the ground, maybe he shows off some of his slick chokes, like what he was able to show against Matej Peñas when he earned his UFC contract on the Contender Series, and you can get Dumas by submission at plus 750. All right, next up, we got Jesus Aguilar going up against Louis Gurule. I was let down heavily by Gurule last time around as he threw a lazy leg kick after a successful first round, but in that second round got a little bit lazy, got countered, and put away by Ode Osborne. But I'm expecting Gurule to learn from that, be a little bit more intent with some of the actions that he throws out there, but he's a high volume, high pressure, high cardio fighter, and I think that will lead to another decision victory for him here, which he can get at plus 140. But if Aguilar is successful in terms of landing his big power in return, you can get Aguilar by knockout at plus 1,000. He also has a nasty guillotine, so if you want to just, get on the safer side with Aguilar, maybe taking him inside the distance at plus 380 is the better way to go. But if this fight ends up reaching the scorecards as the way that I expect it to, I'm thinking that Gurule ends up winning this fight by decision. Like I said, that's at plus 140. All right, next up in the women's strawweight division, we got Tatiana Suarez going up against Amanda Lemos. Striker versus grappler. Not saying Lemos can't grapple, but it's obvious that Suarez has her beat in that realm. But I think no matter where each fighter can keep their fight, specifically in their strengths, if Suarez can get this fight to the ground or if Lemos keeps his fight upright, I think that fighter will be able to produce a finish. You can get the under 2.5, currently sitting at -135 to predict some violence. I'm going to go more specifically with Suarez by submission at +155. And then on the flip side for Lemos, for her to win, it would probably come by knockout, which you can get at +550. All right, next up, we got Joaquim Silva going up against Claudio Puelles. Both guys coming off in a bit of a layoff now, but I'm kind of surprised that Silva found himself as a slight dog. I'm expecting some violence in this matchup, and you can get the under 2.5 at +115, but I think it's going to be Silva who shuts down the grappling of Puelles, as Silva's never been submitted in his career, and he ends up putting that power on Puelles that he will not be able to keep up with, and Silva ends up getting the knockout, which you can get at +480. On the flip side, if Puelles does the unthinkable and is actually able to get the submission victory here, you can cash that ticket at +360. But if Puelles wins, it probably comes with control because maybe he gets some takedowns and is able to keep Silva on his back. Puelles to win by decision is +270. All right, next up, we got Dushko Todorovic going up against Jose Medina. I think we'll see a similar grapple-heavy approach from Todorovic like he tried to implement against Zachary Reese last time around. But I think this could bear fruit, and he ends up pulling off a submission here, which he can get at +500. If Todorovic is unable to get the submission and ends up just grinding out Medina from that top position, you can get that decision prop at +130. On the flip side for Medina, we know there is some durability issues in the game of Todorovic, so for Medina to win by knockout, you can get +700. If you want to be more specific and aim for that round 1 knockout for Medina, you can get that at +1700. All right, next up, we got the debut of Santiago Luna, who I believe is going to be an absolute problem in the UFC, going up against Kwang Lee. Now, I think Lee is durable and skilled enough to, survive and see the scorecards here, but Luna's wrestling and pace and pressure will end up being too much for Lee. I think that will eventually lead to Luna winning this fight on the scorecards, which you can get at +230. Luna does have very big power as well, so if he counters Lee effectively here, maybe he can land a shot on the chin to put him away. You can get Luna by knockout at +420. And then on the flip side, I think the only way Lee wins this fight is if he ends up landing that big shot and catches Luna with a counter, or if he just catches him with one of his unorthodox flashy shots, and you can get a lead to win by knockout at +850. All right. Moving on to the next matchup here, we got Carlos Diego Ferreira going up against Alexander Hernandez. Hernandez looking to pick up a big win in front of his hometown crowd here in San Antonio. Unfortunately, he's going up against a very tough veteran in Carlos Ferreira, who I think, starts a little bit slow, so that could benefit Hernandez here. But as this fight starts going to deeper water, I think we'll see Ferreira start to pull away. I think he wins the second and third rounds and wins the decision, which you can get at +260. If Ferreira is able to muster up a finish here, it probably comes late, and that round 3 finish, you can get at +1300. On the flip side for Hernandez, if for him to replicate that KO from last time around, you can get Hernandez by knockout at +290, or Hernandez ends up utilizing his takedowns and power striking to actually win the first 2 rounds here, and you can get him to win by decision at +300. All right. Next up, we got Kelvin Gastelum going up against Dustin Stoltzfus. I feel like this is a setup matchup for Gastelum to go out there and get a dub, especially on this Noche UFC card. He's been quite inconsistent in this half of his career, but this is a very winnable fight for him, and so much so to the point that I think he actually ends up knocking out Stoltzfus, which you can get at +210. I think this might be competitive early, but as Stoltzfus starts to slow down and Gastelum starts to land his power, that should lead to a knockout, which I think actually ends up happening in the 3rd round, and you can get Gastelum round 3 knockout at +1300. On the flip side for Stoltzfus, for him to have any success, I think it's going to have to come by finish, and nobody's been able to put Gastelum away by knockout, so I'd be surprised if that's how Stoltzfus does it. If he wins, probably comes by submission, which you can get at +1300, which is not a bad head spot if you find yourself overexposed on Gastelum. All right. Next up, we got Rafa Garcia going up against Jared Gordon. Fun fight here. One that I fully expect to end up hitting the scorecards. I think Gordon is going to be the one that's in the driver's seat for the most part with his pace, his pressure, his takedowns, landing his big shots as well. I think he'll muzzle Garcia for the most part, but you can get Gordon to win by decision at -115. You're not getting a bad hedge spot on Garcia to win by decision at +400 if he ends up being the one that ends up landing a little bit better shots and more eye-catching shots to the judges. If Garcia is able to uncork a big shot on Gordon, who has been known to have some sketchy durability at times, you can get Garcia to win by knockout at +650. But Garcia, since being in the UFC, not much of a finish, or at least not showing off his power much. So I wouldn't read too much into that one there. All right. Co-main event now as Rob Font takes on David Martinez. Martinez getting a big opportunity in his second UFC matchup here to co-main event against a veteran like Rob Font, and I think he'll show out. Just as we've been seeing the odds start to close in, he was about +180 late last week, now finds himself around that +110 mark, and I think rightfully so. I think we'll see Martinez utilize his kickboxing style effectively, a lot of mobile movement from distance, crashing the pocket effectively, countering Rob Font as well, and I think that will lead to Martinez winning this fight on the scorecards, which you can get at +200. If Font's chin has finally been tampered with enough to finally crack, maybe this is the time that Martinez can take advantage of that, and you can get Martinez to win by knockout at +500. And then on the flip side, I'd be surprised if Font is able to finish Martinez. I think if Font wins, it probably comes on the scorecards, which you can get at +140. All right. That leads us to our main event now with Diego Lopes looking to halt the momentum of Lord Gene Silva. Very fun fight here, but one that I expect to continue the finishing trend of Gene Silva, who is now, I believe, 5-0 in the UFC, with all of those wins coming by finish. And I think this one ends up coming by knockout, which you can get at +105. I think it probably happens in round 2 or round 3, which you can get round 2 knockout at +750, round 3 knockout at +900. On the flip side, I think it's going to be, if Lopes wins, it probably comes inside the distance as well. You can lean on his BJJ black belt and hope for him to win by submission, which you can get at +650. Or if you believe that he still has that power that brought him to that title shot, maybe Lopes by knockout at +650 is not a bad spot either. But I'm really thinking that Silva breaks Lopes early and then eventually finishes him in the second or third round. All right. That brings us to our top 3 spots, top 3 best prop bets, and then the long shot. Last weekend, we went 0-3 on top 3 prop bets. We had Patterson by submission at +210. He ends up knocking out Trey Waters. We had Bukowskis by decision at +330. He ends up knocking out Paul Craig. And then we had Bahallo by decision at +160. Didn't really have a prayer as Imavov was in his bag that night. But we did hit our long shot, which was Benoit Saint-Denis, round 2 submission at +1600. Very happy to get back on the board with the long shot there and get us back into the profit for the long shots. Again, they don't hit that often, but when they do, they definitely are profitable like they were last year. They are profitable as of right now, but we still got about 3 months of action left to see if we can keep it that way. All right. Let's get into this weekend's top 3 prop spots. Quite juicy. First one up, Alice Pereira by knockout +420. Second one, Zachary Reese round 1 knockout +320. And then the last one, we're going to go Tatiana Suarez by submission +155. For the long shot, we're going to go Kelvin Gastelum round 3 knockout at +1300. There you guys go. Top 3 prop spots. Props for the entire card. So hopefully you're able to take some of this information and cash some tickets this weekend. And that's pretty much a wrap on the content for this weekend. Now, there is no UFC next weekend. There is a Contender Series, which I'll be breaking down. But there's also Octagon and KSW, which I don't do YouTube content for, but I do written breakdowns on the MMA LOT and Patreon page. So if you want to check that out, I'll be breaking that down on the Patreon page. Check the link in the description below for that. Very much looking forward to breaking down those cards for you guys. But I'm very happy to have a UFC off week sprinkled in here. I know we had one a few weeks ago as well, but there was a lot of work to do the past few weeks to keep up with the content. And I believe the last weekend of September, there's 5 or 6 events on one weekend that I'm going to be covering. So I'm going to be preparing for that and trying to get ahead on my work for that as well. So I'm not dying on that fight week. All right, make sure you guys check out the LFA breakdown that I dropped yesterday, the Cage Warriors breakdown that I dropped earlier today. I have official track plays for that on the Lock of the Night Patreon page as well if you want to check that out. Otherwise, good luck on all your action this weekend, folks, and I'll see you guys again on Sunday for the Contender Series breakdown. See you guys then. Peace.